Let's talk about Velocity Girl. She might pick up a controller every once in a while over at a friend's house, but really, gaming's not a central part of her existence. How do we get the Velocity Girls of the world reconnected to our industry and back into the game? She's going to rejoin us through the Xbox Live Arcade.
The Xbox Live Arcade did have an impressive lineup, didn't it? With 612 games, it almost felt like its own separate console. Like the special little private sanctum that was tucked away in the attic. A place you could go to play games when there just wasn't much else to play. With each and every title having been curated by a quality control team at Microsoft. A lot of what you would find on here was actually pretty decent. Whereas today, the Xbox store is filled with a cavalcade of inconsistency. Take me back to the days where the worst game in the Xbox marketplace was some piece of junk car game that Toyota made to promote their new car, Yaris from Toyota, a game which on its release had been ranked the 10th worst game of all time on Metacritic. Today, the 10th worst game on Metacritic is something called Undertale. Take me back to the time where the only people that were allowed to make video games were the people who deserved to make video games, like Twisted Pixel, Fiep Fish, Jonathan Blau, and of course Doritos, who made 3 Xbox Live Arcade exclusives, since, making video games worked out so well for Burger King back in the day. And coincidentally enough, anytime I ever ate Burger King, I got Diaritos. So come with me, if you will, on a trip down memory lane as I talk about what I deem to be the best games that the Xbox Live Arcade had to offer. Games like World of Warships. Now, this is not the sort of warship you would find at a Catholic church. Instead, it is the ultimate game of battleship. Whether you're an old man, a young man, or Rihanna, this is a video game anybody can play. They have new content releasing every month, like new ships, nations, cosmetics, or collaborations like the one they did with Transformers. You can dock your warship at the Michael Bay in over 40 unique maps, each with dynamic weather, all of which have been updated with new water effects and textures, and with multiple ship classes to choose from, like iconic destroyers, aircraft carriers, battleships, and submarines. World of Warships has got you pegged. And here's the best part. World of Warships is now available on consoles, whereas before it used to be inconsolable. Use the code BRAVO to receive a huge starter pack which includes credits, premium account time, a ship, and a bunch of doubloons, which isn't as good as having a bunch of triploons, but it's better than having a bunch of singleoons. Now, big thanks to World of Warships for the sponsorship. Now let's get back to the video. If you could scrounge up $10 to purchase 800 Microsoft points to purchase a video game, then Mr. and Miss Splosion Man would be well worth your money. I mean, what a great set of platformers. And I will mostly be focusing on Miss Splosion Man for this video since it surpasses the original game in pretty much every way. The gimmick here is that you can do a triple jump by sploding. After 3 jumps, you run out of splode juice, and to recover that juice, you simply land back on the ground or slide down a wall for long enough, and that's it. It's such a simple mechanic, but they managed to keep it fresh by giving you barrels to splode on, which send you flying but also refill your splode juice. Green barrels that lock you into a scripted trajectory. Barrels that you kick into scientists. Walls which give you infinite splode juice, granting you an entirely different mode of traversal. A goddess named Mandy that you can possess who allows you to barrel through dangerous areas. It was brimming with variety too. It threw all kinds of scenarios at the player, like having something dangerous beneath you that you need to outrun. The tried and true classic of timed platforms, a series of hover cars to jump across, robots to avoid, bosses to battle, reflex-based on-rail segments, portions where you're free-falling with no splode juice, slower and more methodical segments where patience and precision are required as you try to find out when and where to launch your woman, general puzzle solving while acid is rising beneath you and you need to outrun it. The puzzles are super intuitive as well. Generally, you understand how to solve them the instant you stumble into them since they're quite simple. They're not meant to be so complex that you're sat there scratching your head. They're meant to give the game a much needed change of pace without slowing things down too much. And they definitely succeed at doing that. From start to finish, the game is just super fun to play and it has a ton of personality. I love the sense of humor the game has, and while I don't find it to be terribly funny, I love the spirit of fun behind it. It never takes itself seriously and gives off this sense that everyone at the studio was having a blast working on the game. What I like most about it though is that it's pretty challenging. It puts all your skills to the test, reflexes, performance under pressure, and if you've played the co-op mode with a buddy, which involves you needing to splode off of one another to reach every single shoe for an achievement, it'll really test your patience. And back in the day, I did manage to get all those shoes. I was able to get them with my buddy Michael from the 7th grade. We didn't have a good time together though. We yelled and bickered at each other throughout our entire playthrough. In fact, it got so bad that we actually didn't speak for a few weeks after we had beaten it. It put our entire friendship in limbo. Now, it's no secret that Limbo is an amazing game. It's been talked about to death, and yes, it is available on PC and the PlayStation Store now, but it was an Xbox Live Arcade exclusive for a really long time. And after revisiting this, I gotta tell ya, this game hasn't aged a day. The design of this game is sheer perfection. It is remarkably intuitive. It tells you how to do everything without telling you how to do anything. Like, look at this. In one fell swoop, the game teaches us to scan our environment more closely for threats, and that the body of an 8-year-old boy is no match for a military-grade bear trap. Shortly after, we stumble into a rope with meat, but the meat is too heavy, preventing us from progressing upwards. Now here we can surmise that if Bear Trap destroys Little Boy, then Bear Trap also destroys meat, because when you think about it, meat is pretty much all an 8-year-old boy really is. And this is what Limbo does so well. It presents you with a problem while also providing you with all the tools for the solution after it silently teaches you how each tool works. There are environmental hazards everywhere which really keep you on your toes. The gaps are spaced out perfectly so that it feels like you might not make your jump, which keeps things feeling tense. For a game where the only things your character can do is jump and grab, it's got a lot going on. And like Splosion Man, the level of variety on display here is impressive. You get wrapped up by a giant spider and you're all cocooned, which completely changes how the kid moves, forcing you to think differently about how and when to jump a gap. You get globbed on by a mind-controlling parasite that forces you to move in one direction, only turning around when exposed to a light source, forcing you to play the game completely differently. And no one section goes on for too long. Everything is paced out to make for a nearly perfect 1 to 2 hour experience. From the sound design to the visuals, this game is oozing with an atmosphere that I find to be both slightly unsettling, but also somewhat comforting at the same time due to the ambient noise of the environment. It sounds like you're in a safe and peaceful wooded area, yet everything in it is terrifying and wants to kill you. Every time I start this game up, I always feel compelled to finish the entire thing. I must have played through Limbo 6 or 7 times, and that's a lot for me. The puzzles are real solid too. Some of them are super simple, but others will provide you with a significant brain challenge. Brain Challenge is pretty cool. It's essentially WarioWare, but for smart people. It's just a series of mini-games that are meant to provide you with a multitude of mental challenges. And lucky for me, I love being mentally challenged. The more you play, the better you get. The better you get, the higher your brain percentage. And the higher the percentage, the harder the mini-games become. Ultimately, the goal is to hit 100% brain power and become like Bradley Cooper from that film where he took all those pills. You know, A Star is Born. It has a ton of mini-games to choose from, and each one exercises a different part of your brain. You got combination equations, deductive reasoning, the Rain Man game where you count matches, simple addition which forces you to calculate a route. You got one here, look at that, which ball bounces the highest. Is that fun? I don't know. But my personal favorite game, Traveling, I find this one to be fun because I seem to be a bit of a savant at this game. All you need to do is follow the pattern that you're shown on screen, and no matter how hard it gets, I just can't seem to miss. You only have 1 minute to complete each minigame, and the more tasks you complete within that time frame, the higher your brain percentage rises. I really love the challenge this game provides and the pressure that it puts on you. It's surprisingly addicting, and if you don't understand a minigame at first, it feels really fulfilling once you're able to figure it out for yourself. There's something so gratifying about getting answers correct, especially when you start getting them back to back, netting yourself some juicy 5 in a row, 10 in a row, and sometimes even 15 in a rows. Oh, baby. They say that if you practice this game enough, you can actually learn how to do honest-to-God geometry wars. If you've never played this game, then you're a square. It is the king of twin-stick shooters, with one goal and one goal alone: get the highest score you possibly can, so that when the servers eventually get shut down, you got nothing to show for it. On the surface, Geometry Wars looks really basic, but it's actually deceptively deep. And that comes down to the enemy types. You got these guys who float across the board aimlessly. These just come towards you in a straight line. These come towards you in a straight line but dodge your fire. Purple blocks, when shot, become a double box. Once a red circle takes damage, it turns into a black hole, absorbing everything around it. And once it gets full, it bursts and spawns fast little circles. These guys create a hot, Tron-like trail behind them and can only be killed by shooting the frenulum. This flies at you really quickly and can only be destroyed by being shot in the back or when it stops moving entirely. Jacks come after you in such a large quantity that you can't help but feel overwhelmed as they begin to completely infest the board. In combination with one another, these 8 enemy types create such a fun dynamic. You have to constantly prioritize which enemies to kill first in order to ensure survival. Things start to feel dire pretty quickly as the screen fills up with enemies. It becomes so tense that I often find myself involuntarily grunting like an elderly man at a public urinal. As I barely squeezed through improvised gaps I had ripped through using my blasters. But the final and most difficult enemy of all is your own self. Oh, what? Because you need to seriously focus. It's all too easy to become complacent and let your mind wander after a few moments of safety, to only then be heartbreakingly struck. No! After obtaining a certain amount of points, you'll earn additional lives and bombs. If you get too overwhelmed, you can use a bomb, which eradicates every single enemy on the screen, and it sounds exactly like part of the theme song for American Horror Story, one of my least favorite shows. The catch is, though, you don't get any points for any of the enemies that you killed with a bomb, but you get to continue living. And staying alive is as important in this game as it is in real life, since you'll start to multiply your points after killing a certain amount of enemies. Once you get a 9 times multiplier, you need to kill 2,000 more enemies to cap out and hit times 10. And getting 500 points for killing the Blue Diamond Phillips is sheer insanity. But if you die, you completely lose your multiplier, which makes staying alive for a long time incredibly exciting. But that excitement is tainted by a deep, deep, dark fear of dying again, of losing my multiplier and feeling that terrible, demoralizing heartbreak once more. But by God, if that fear doesn't make me feel alive. And that right there is Geometry Wars. Geometry Wars 2 and 3 were also pretty good and are still really fun to play, with gameplay additions that deepened gameplay mechanics, like being able to collect the gems off of dead shapes to increase your multiplier, and there are new shapes to destroy like arrows and teeny tiny triangles. I love all 3 of these games. I find them to be very addicting. I replayed Geometry Wars 3 for this video, and I couldn't put it down. But the real reason I brought up Geometry Wars 3 was to show you that I got some pretty high scores on it back when it came out. Look at that right there. Even today, Geometry Wars is still an absolute marble blast to play. And Marble Blast is an absolute classic. It's like Monkey Ball, except it doesn't suck. All you do is roll your marble around and collect all the gems in the arena to open up the exit for the next level. And while Marble Blast did only have one song in it that looped forever, the song was a doozy. Like everything else in this video, Marble Blast is pretty simplistic, but they give you some power-ups to play around with, like a speed boost, a super jump, and a gravity modifier, which do shake things up. The maps are pretty well designed too. Some of them are built to challenge you, while others are built with pure fun in mind, like this one here, my personal favorite, which just allows you to go really fast if you hit all the pyramids just right. When I was a kid, I used to play this level over and over again with my brother to try and beat my personal best time. It was pretty fun. And while I never found this game to be all that challenging, I did find it to be very pleasant, and I can't help but think back on it fondly. Marble Blast used to have a multiplayer component to it too, where you race other marbles and collect gems before they do to get the highest score. I met one of my oldest and longest online friends through this game, and 15 years later, we still talk to one another. As far as I can tell though, it seems like Marble Blast Ultra was pulled off of the Xbox Live Arcade and is no longer playable, which is kinda sad because it was a pleasant little platformer, meaning Marble Blast is now nothing more than a distant memory. I have realized while making this video that I truly love a challenge while I'm gaming. If I'm not challenged, I'm not engaged. This is why I play things like Enter the Gungeon, or Steriden, or Geometry Wars, or Miss Splosion Man. A hearty challenge leads to good replay value. And it feels badass to unlock the hardest achievement in a tough game like Geometry Wars 2 live on Twitch TV. Everybody calm down. Oh, I did it! I did it! Oh my god! Woo! It was really fun making this video, going back and revisiting things that used to bring me joy. And yeah, I know, I did leave out a few classics like Shadow Complex, Kingdom for Keflings, and Aegis Wing, but that's mostly because I really just don't care about those games. And yeah, Braid was pretty cool, but it had this really sad music that just reminded me of the elderly, so I couldn't play it. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.